This is a follow-up video to quantum gravity versus materialism. This is directed to Dorpaton mostly, but if your name is Daniel and your username is the Honest Techno-Atheist, keep listening because some of this concerns you as well. First of all, I'd like to apologize for a few things. The quantum gravity versus objectivism title at first wasn't fair, and the putting Randroid in the tag section was kind of overdone too. I was just kind of ticked off at your attitude in the private messages there, and I overreacted and did that. So sorry about that. I did compare your position on the holographic principle to that of creationism at the end. That I will not apologize for. That was not meant as an insult. That was actually meant as a statement of fact, believe it or not. But we'll get into that later in this video. So no, I'm not taking that down until you modify your view on the holographic principle. Alright, now I want to get into what this video is all about, and that is the argument from ignorance fallacy, which I believe you make twice, Dorpaton, and I'm going to point out how you do this and where. The first one is in regards to science and ontology, and the second one is in regards to epistemology. So what the argument from ignorance basically is where you set up an argument of some sort, and then you say all the possible counter-arguments can only fit into a certain category of arguments, and I'm not going to look at any other arguments, and I'm just going to dismiss them as invalid on the outset before looking at them. So you're essentially constraining the range of debate artificially with this. Here's an example from Wikipedia. P is too incredible, or I cannot imagine how P could possibly be true. Therefore, P must be false. A good example of this would be, like, say you argued against the existence of Bigfoot, and then some guy comes along and shoots a Bigfoot and says, "Here, Dorpaton, come look at my Bigfoot corpse." And you say, "No, that can't possibly be a Bigfoot corpse because I know Bigfoot doesn't exist because that's ridiculous, and so therefore I'm going to prove that Bigfoot doesn't exist by closing my eyes and not looking at the Bigfoot you shot." In this case, sure, the existence of this dead Bigfoot is incredible, but that's not what we're asking. We're asking, is it true that it exists or not? There's a difference between the two. And you do this with the holographic principle. You think that it's somehow too fantastical, and so you refuse to believe it and throw it out on the outset without an argument. I mean, you sort of give an argument. The closest thing you do to give an argument is say that the holographic principle is based on string theory and the ADS-CFT correspondence, and that has somehow been proven false, and so therefore the holographic principle is false. You don't cite anywhere where you learn that the string theory is false. A lot of physicists have problems with string theory. I have a problem with it myself for several reasons, but that said, hardly any of them think that it's completely false. And this is not to mention the fact that the holographic principle derives from, at least two other fields of research that we've studied that have nothing to do with string theory. And that would be black hole thermodynamics and loop quantum gravity. The funny thing is that in this case, in contrast to the Bigfoot example I gave earlier, the holographic principle is actually science. Now, it would be very difficult for me to imagine the holographic principle not being true in the end. Okay, virtually everyone in the field thinks that some form of it is true, and to boot, it comes from both string theory and loop quantum gravity. You mentioned that loop quantum gravity hasn't been proven to be the final model either, and so you say it may not be true because of that. But the fact of the matter is that 99% of our research efforts come in from string theory or loop quantum gravity. So one or the other of those is going to be true, and if either of those is true, the holographic principle will be true as well. Now you cite causal dynamical triangulations as a alternative quantum gravity model, and I presume you do this because you think that it's not going to derive the holographic principle. And I kind of suspect, and I don't want to say this for certain, but I kind of suspect that what you're doing here is you're actually picking a quantum gravity model that does not derive the holographic principle and then asserting that to be true because you don't want it to be true. I know I don't want to say that for certain, but I'm just saying. But now the funny thing is, I don't think causal dynamical triangulations fits into your picture of the world either. Let's go to Wikipedia and see what it says here. Causal dynamical triangulation, abbreviated as CDT, invented by René Law, blah blah blah, is an approach to quantum gravity that, like loop quantum gravity, is background independent. This means that it does not assume any pre-existing dimensional space, but rather attempts to show how the space-time fabric itself evolves. from presumably something below it. Now, I forget exactly where this was. I have to dig back through your comments to find this probably, but I remember a specific time where you asked me, we were talking about the Casimir forces, and you asked how there could be, as a sort of rhetorical question, how there could be anything more fundamental than space. Well, the fact that you would ask such a question makes me question whether or not you actually understand causal dynamical triangulations. The whole point of there being something background independent means that you're having a model derived from something without a background. The background derives from the model rather than as a premise of the model. Okay, this means necessarily that you're going to have something more fundamental than space-time. And of course, from a materialistic perspective, that does not fit into your model. So now, I don't want to just say that you don't know what you're talking about, but I honestly suspect that you don't know what you're talking about here. Otherwise, you wouldn't be saying something like that. I mean, I don't know how you can miss a detail like this and just go ahead and spout this at the same time that you're also questioning how anything could be more fundamental than space-time. Now, this gets into why I was comparing your position to creationism before. I know you're going to take this as an insult, but I did not mean this as an insult whatsoever. It was simply a statement of fact. I happen to know some creationists, and because of that, I see this kind of thing all the time. They'll take science they don't understand and then try and use it in some way to refute other science, that they don't want to admit is true. And you're doing this here. There's this overwhelming evidence that the holographic principle, or overwhelming reason to believe that the holographic principle is probably true, and you react to it and you cite something else and don't understand even what you're citing as a reason for why it's likely not true. Now, that wasn't the only reason I compared your position to creationism. One of the other reasons, and this is huge, this is denialism. Let's look at some of your comments here to exemplify what I mean. Okay, you quote Maldacena here, and then you say, it's sad there's some humans who actually want this trash to be true. Okay, if you had any idea who Juan Maldacena was, you wouldn't be calling his view trash. This guy is like, he's not exactly like an Einstein, but he's like Niels Bohr, okay? This guy is a big shot physicist today, and he's not the only one who's saying this kind of thing. There's a lot of, you're basically taking what a whole bunch of scientists have to say and then just calling it trash, throwing it out the window automatically. This is what got me pissed off before, okay? That's why I put the quantum gravity versus objectivism in the title and the Randroid in the tags, which was an overreaction, but you have to understand why I did that. This is ridiculous. And then you also assert somewhere that there are other ways to resolve the black hole information paradox. Well, if there are, please post them because I have yet seen them. I've never heard any scientists speaking about this other solution whatsoever. And knowing what I know about the Bekenstein bound, I would highly doubt that there is such another solution. The holographic principle is the solution to the black hole information paradox. And then on the topic of denialism, look at this comment you have here. Wake up, fight Roth's paradigm. You're more than just a thought in some god's mind. Okay, now first of all, you don't have to be a theist to believe the holographic principle. You can't very well be a materialist, but there are people who believe in information monism who are not theists. Steven Weinberg, for example, believes that the world is made of information ultimately, and he is actually also a very outspoken atheist. It's just that you can't very well be a materialist. I mean, you could kind of force the holographic principle and materialism together if you wanted to, but it would be a very ad hoc and contrived setup to do that. You'd basically have to say that the world is made to look as though it's made of information and then have some even deeper level of matter, which is producing that illusion, which would kind of defeat the purpose of materialism in the first place. But now, fight Roth's paradigm? I mean, all I'm doing here is proposing science. Everything I've suggested is connected to science. Okay, now, maybe it's wrong, maybe it's bad science, but that doesn't mean you fight it, okay? It's like, say we're in the 1800 or 19th century and Darwin just came out with Origin of Species, okay? Now, if you're going at it scientifically, you don't fight it, okay? You examine it and see if it's true or false, but you don't say fight it and then get all outraged and, bent out of shape over this. This is exactly what I mean when I said you're behaving like a creationist. With science, you're supposed to examine things, honestly and objectively, and not get emotional about it like you are here. Now, the last reason I compared you to this is dogmatism, which is something else I see with creationists a lot. You dismiss out of hand the possibility of the holographic principle being true as, quote, hologram, occult, mystical drivel. Okay, which tells me, you're saying these are the arguments I'm going to accept, these are the arguments I'm not going to accept. If any arguments fall in this other category, I'm simply going to discount them automatically. In which case, the argument is actually from science itself, okay? So you're essentially doing an argument from ignorance, and you're cutting off some science that could be used in the debate because you think it's too fantastical to be true. Here's a perfect example. You say, Rotz insists that matter, time, space, and energy did not always exist but had a beginning, which is a fact from quantum gravity. But matter, time, space, and energy is the natural realm. Okay, what you're doing here is you're saying, God exists outside the natural realm. Okay, fine. But you're then saying that you're basically implying that nothing could exist outside the natural realm, and you will dismiss all possible arguments for that being the case, even if, they happen to actually come from science. You simply just dismiss this as, quote, hologram, occult, mystical drivel. Now, if you're going to be a strong atheist and not just an atheist, you have to actually examine all possible claims, which means you're going to have to examine, quote, occult mystic claims as well, okay? You can't just dismiss them, but you do anyway. And, well, my thing it's just science, right? I mean, are you suggesting that I should have labeled the physics of the hidden world, which is all just physics, proving the existence of magic or something? I mean, you mentioned in this private message here that you think that the implicate order, you think I'm referring to a supernatural realm or something. Now, if I was happening to be describing some kind of supernatural realm here, that would be, quite something, right? That would be like finding a crashed UFO in the woods in the back of your house somewhere. But, the chances of that happening are crazy, right? But the thing is if that did happen, you simply couldn't just dismiss it, right? You'd have to actually go in and investigate and see if it was true or false. You couldn't just throw it out of the, on the onset and ignore it. This is just sheer dogmatism. This is all this is. Now, I've changed the criterion a little bit under which I'll take down the creationism tag or comment at the end of the video. You don't have to believe in informationalism, but you do have to agree that the holographic principle is at least possibly true, okay? I'll then take it down after that. But if you don't at least do that, I'm completely justified in referring to your position as, or comparing it to creationism. Now, to officially debunk this materialist dogma that you and Daniel have, I'm going to point out that if quantum gravity is true, there must necessarily be something more fundamental than space-time, or matter and energy in space and time. And the reason for this is general relativity is describing gravity as bent space-time. Quantum gravity is more fundamental than space-time, or general relativity, and so therefore it must break the space-time field down into something which is more fundamental than space-time. And then obviously matter and energy cannot exist unless they exist within space-time. And so therefore whatever this is not matter or energy either. So because of this, you simply you're no longer justified in claiming that everything in existence is matter and energy in space and time. Now lastly, I'm going to quick get into the second time where you make an argument from ignorance. This is in regards to epistemology. You say, face it, you are stuck in Platonic forms in the void fundamentalist paradigm that has already been flushed down the toilet since Platonic forms are outdated, archaic, and obsolete. This is a crap argument. This is a complete crap argument. Alright, just because it doesn't fit into the modern bullshit positivist paradigm does not mean that Platonism is false. You don't give an argument for it being wrong, you just state that it's wrong and then dismiss it. Penrose actually mentioned this in his book. He actually said that his view is also based on Platonism, and he said that people dismiss it because of this, and they say that this is archaic, and he says, but that is hardly an argument. Now, the fact of the matter is if you dismiss Platonism, you're going to have to either violate the law of non-contradiction or Gödel's theorem. This is actually why Kurt Gödel himself was a Platonist. So no, Platonism can't be wrong, by definition. Now, if you want to make a claim to strong atheism, you simply can't do this argument from ignorance stuff anymore. You have to actually look at these things and examine them instead of simply dismissing them so flippantly like you do, okay? Alright, that's pretty much all I wanted to say for now. So to sum up here, stop being so bloody dogmatic, okay? Don't throw out science when it doesn't fit into your preconceived notions of the world. And lastly, drop materialism, alright? Knowing what we know about quantum gravity, materialism is simply preposterous now. It's complete crap. Alright, see you guys. That's all for now.